So now we have just the character creation is its own file, which isn't open right now, and then the entirety of episode 4 is open. It's a little over 3.5 hours, with cutting out ums and silent bits and like stuff that is not important. I don't know how much time will get cut. It's kind of hard to guess that, but I'm guessing that each individual part of episode 4 will be a little over an hour and a half of audio, which is good. You want it to be under 2 hours, but probably more than 45 minutes unless you had a particularly short episode. So yeah, the next thing I would do is just go through the entirety of play, just like chronologically, and it'll take a while because obviously it'll take longer than 3.5 because you have to re-listen to parts and cut things and blah blah blah. I would just go through, leave plot points for when things are happening. You can leave notes about like if, for example, like let's say here the doorbell rang and like this was at Scory's house, so Scory got up to answer it, and it's the mailman or whatever, and you can hear them talking in the background. If that was happening and the rest of the players at the table were just like, okay, we're gonna like talk about sports for a second, you know, these sports loving boys. All their sports. Wow, such sports, very sports. Wow, the footballs? Yes. That's how they would talk about sports, right? No. You would probably cut that. That's not related. But if Scory got up and answered the door and like the mailman's in the background, but the boys were like, oh, what move do you think I should make as the spell slinger? Like, do you think I should take this or that for the future? Like, that could be interesting to keep. If in doubt, I would like keep something and just leave a note like, should we cut? Or like something like that. And you can send that to me and I can like talk to you about it and we can come to a conclusion. So yeah, note track should have plenty of note spaces. And then I would do the whole thing, see how much it actually ends up being. Let's say it ends up being exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes. Then you would want to try to find a natural point around halfway through, to suggest a place to cut, or not, even beyond suggesting a place to cut, to do the cut, because it'll be easier to deal with two files that are an hour and a half long instead of one file that is 3 hours and 30 minutes long. So yeah, find a natural like pause, like figure out where you want to cut it, and just cut it apart there. And just like I showed you before with like cut, like literally cut Control X, Control Paste into a new document, save both of them. So then you'll save whichever half you cut as for part 1 or 2, and then rename this one to, rename that one to, wow, I'm doing great. Rename the other one to whichever part wasn't present. What did I do? Show all windows. What? No available windows except for this one, which is available. Interesting. That has nothing to do with Audacity. That's just me not being good at Macs. Yeah, so I'm not going to actually do that because I don't know where to cut, and I'm not going to listen to 3.5 hours on a screen recording. But let's say that has happened, and this is like 4.1, and then 4.2 is also somewhere else. In that case, what you need to do is, you've done like the sound diminishing, you've cut out the oohs and ums. You could send me the Audacity project, but it's huge. Oh, actually, you do need to send me it because the notes are in it. Haven't gotten to that part yet, because usually it's just on my computer and I don't have to think about transferring it. So don't worry about exporting in that case. And don't worry about having the MP3 library, because if you don't need to export, you don't have to worry about it. I have a hard drive. We can physically get files from one another. We'll figure it out as we go. But yeah, basically the things that I will then go and do after I get these edited bits from you is I'll record like the intro that says like these are the players and their pronouns and whatever, and I will cut that in the front. I will do a fade in at the beginning of play. I'll do a fade out. Those are really easy, by the way. There's like, you literally highlight what you want to fade in, you go to effect, and then there's literally an option for fade in and fade out. You just click it and it does it. And yeah, sometimes I'll put in like interstitial, like narrator hopping in to interrupt, but I try not to do that in the middle of play. I only try to do that like I did that the last episode, a couple instances at the beginning, before people were actually really playing. They were still setting up, and I made some silly comments about certain things, like eating popsicles, or popicles, as Glisten said. And yeah. Oh, the only other thing I want to say is when you're making notes, always make a note. Like if you're like, oh, should I make this a note or not? Go ahead and make it a note. You're not going to regret that. You can always delete the note and nothing happens. Another good thing to note while you're listening is if you find a clip of someone talking and it's like a kind of funny moment, I would note that.
Please excuse our...
But there's no amplification.
difficulties. We will be with you shortly.
So I just happened to click on an example. This is Zach doing some voice and then Ethan coming in. If Zach had just been doing the character voice, like that could have been a good thing to note as like, for these, basically I'm looking for bits to pull from the audio to make sound clips at the beginning when I say, this is what so-and-so's voice sounds like, so that you know what their character voice sounds like. So for this, I would do all caps Zach, if I wanted to maybe use it as a sound clip. Making it all caps just makes it easier for me to go back and find which ones are sound clips versus which ones are like plot points. Yeah, and you can do more than one of that. If there are like multiple clips of Zach that are good, you can note them. Trying to get at least one for each person is obviously helpful because if they aren't there when I get them, then I have to go through and find them, which is fine, but it would be super helpful if I could get a file and like had multiple little clips of people's voices. The example I showed you actually would not be a good example because Ethan cuts in the middle, and like the thing that Zach is voicing is like not particularly interesting. Like it is a character voice, but it's not like a funny joke or something. Usually I try to make it a joke or an interesting foible about the character or something like that. Like, I think one time, like, Emily's character, Aster Alaric, was saying, like, it's 3 a.m, this is not a good time. And, like, that's a good clip because it was just Emily talking, and it showed that Aster was very exasperated with whatever was going on. Yeah, I think that's it. So, I'm gonna stop screen recording.